Iowa State survives UCF on the road and moves to 2-0 in their last two. The question is, where do we grade this win? Just how big was this today on Locked On Cyclones?
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day and making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Wherever you're watching or listening, be sure to subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we're talking all basketball. We're going to take a bigger picture look at the win over UCF, what happened, and then I really want to look at the bench, and is this a bigger win than maybe just one more W in the W column? And then finally, to round things out, college game day, college Ames day happened last weekend. A lot of people didn't know about it. We're going to talk about that in the third segment. But before we get that far, obviously, we got to talk about the UCF game. Okay, we talked about it yesterday, and I said UCF, every team in the Big 12 is one that you have to look out for. Arizona learned it facing Kansas State. Seems like maybe Kansas State pretty solid, but either way, we're not either Locked On Arizona or Locked On Wildcats. Not over here. You can find those, but they're not here. Point being, Big 12, very serious place to play. And Iowa State only scored 77 in this game compared to the 108 prior. So 30-point difference there. So obviously not the greatest offensive performance, but they held UCF to 65. So 77-65 win for the Cyclones. And honestly, what was a game that, yes, it was kind of close, but it never felt that way. And I do think that's a good sign for the Cyclones. When you look at the kind of curvature of the points in the graphs in this whole thing, you'll notice there is a point right before the first half where the lines touch. Okay, UCF actually had a lead on Iowa State, about 5 minutes left in the first half, and credit to UCF, they played their hearts out for about 20. Well, really a lot of this game, but the first 25 minutes they gave Iowa State all they could handle. And they shot pretty well. They really did. They were throwing things up, and it kind of felt like maybe this was going to be a game where Iowa State's going to have to play lights out to avoid just a crazy shooting night in the first half. UCF went 40% from the field, 3 of 14 from three, but it did feel like they came at the right times, and they were just kind of crazy shots. So it was going to be one of those, like, are they just going to make them when they need to make them kind of deals, and they take that lead. But luckily, Iowa State goes back on a run and extends it. I guess it's really not really extending it, but takes a 2-point lead going into the half. Then in the second half, it wasn't quite the same story. Obviously, Iowa State relatively running away with it, kind of held, I would say, about a 10-point lead after a 6-0 run to start the second half by the Cyclones. And yeah, UCF kind of stayed in it, and scoring picked up at the end with some major press by UCF, but overall, Iowa State felt like the better team in this game, which is where you want to be. It really is. Starters-wise, obviously, you're going to have Jefferson, Jackson, Lipsey, and Gilbert, and Momcilovic back in that lineup. And we've got 13 from Jefferson, 3 from Momcilovic, 8 from Jackson, 11 from Lipsey, and 15 from Gilbert. Momcilovic only 1 of 5 from 3, and that was his only bucket, 1 of 7 on the night, 21 minutes for Momcilovic with 30 points as his basically offensive output there. Did have an assist and 1 rebound as well, but really 3 points was kind of his production, his contribution. Okay. Jefferson with 13 of his own, Keshon with 15, felt like a very aggressive player tonight, shot 6 of 9 from the floor, went 50% from 3 at 1 and 2. Overall, a really solid night from Keshon Gilbert, probably the strongest player out there for the Cyclones. And really, this game was just as simple as I do think Iowa State is better than UCF. I think UCF played a little bit of maybe better defense, arguably, but Iowa State did too. And so you kind of seen both ends of the spectrum here in a UCF-ISU, I would say, rivalry, but they've played 3 games and Iowa State's won them all, so I probably shouldn't say that. No diss to UCF. It's just that I don't think that's the right term to use. We've seen them kind of go lights out in a 108 to 80, whatever that point spread was. Lots and lots of points, lots and lots of buckets, lots and lots of possessions. And in this one, you see a 77-65 game with a 12-point differential. It just feels to me like Iowa State's probably the better team here. And that's good news. Iowa State's got to start winning those games. Obviously, for one reason, to keep the top 10 ranking, which is completely worthless. Don't even get me started on that. People are getting all bent out of shape. Longest streak in the nation at top 10. Like, we could be ranked 1 millionth for all I care, as long as we're winning games. But it is a neat little deal. But either way, the concept is got to keep momentum here. That's what we've been talking about. And I do think, I said yesterday, depends on how this win goes for Iowa State. I do think this is a bit of a momentum builder. Now, we're not talking about the Cincinnati game now, but Cincinnati is on a 3-game win streak of double digits coming into Hilton. Feels a little bit like the Kansas State game that we had to endure not that long ago. So obviously that'll be something to keep our tabs on. But Iowa State building their own momentum as well. 19-5 now on the year, 9-4 in the conference. And obviously, we'll talk more about the bench players in the second the second segment here. That's why I haven't touched on who's coming off the bench, who performed more than the starters in this game. So don't stick around for that. But obviously, the main thing I wanted to talk about was this team, the starters, I suppose, and really everybody. But in this game, what they very effective on the glass, 41 rebounds, 11 offensively. They seem to come at the right times as well, with Jefferson getting the and one right out of the half there. Playing kind of just fast. Only 5 steals in this one. And yes, it did translate to where we got here. It's going to be the points off turnovers 8, right? So that's pretty solid. Nate Heise, we'll mention him. Like I said, had a nice transition layup for the Cyclones. That's always going to get everyone pumped up. Not the same shooting, though. Not a great shooting night. That's what TJ said in his postgame presser. Weren't shooting lights out in this game, but shooting the right shots. And that's where you want to be. Okay, if you're shooting the right shots and they're not falling, it's not the end of the world. We have seen it result in a loss, but you can still win those games. And I think this is a prime example of that. 2 of 12 from 3 in the second half is kind of ugly. It really is. But free throws down the stretch, Iowa State, that's how they kept UCF out of this one. UCF had to press late, and that is what I will close out this segment with, is that end of the game. And it ended up being fine. You go 10 of 10, I think it was the last 10, and 15 of 17 in the second half from the free throw line. That's solid, 88% there. You obviously want to be at 100% because they are free. If it's free, it's for me, is how I kind of go about this whole thing. But 15 to 17, still not bad. And you do come away with the win, right? That's what it really comes down to. But I did think the press kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say it. It just kind of caught Iowa State off guard, I think, for a second there. And it's not the end of the world. It's really not. But certainly something that Iowa State needs to spend some time on for the tournament, because UCF, at the end of this game, they didn't roll over. Okay, they needed this win. 4 straight, now 5 straight losses for the Golden Knights. That's just not awesome. It is, and I believe they tweeted. I think their baseball starts February 14th, and that was what they were like. Hey, the barstool for UCF was like, look, guys, we got this coming for us here, so don't worry. But the basketball team did want to get this win to find something in the rough. Very talented team, find that diamond in the rough, but couldn't find it here. And they did try to pull out all the stops, bringing out full court pressure, forcing Iowa State, to make some turnovers. Keshon Gilbert, I think, had 4 turnovers in this game. Not the end of the world. Very aggressive player. I would like to see him potentially not over dribble as much, but I'm not going to get nitpicky with Keshon Gilbert being such a dog. Obviously, we didn't talk even about his 7 rebounds in this one. He flew around with 4 assists as well. So 15 points from him. Dog. Okay, I'm not going to get super nitpicky, but that is kind of a result. And we saw one of his turnovers come during that full court press. I would hate to see, and this is not a shot at UNI, but I will never forget watching UNI lose to Texas A&M in the 2016 March Madness. I'll never forget it. And if that were to happen to Iowa State, I might just have to crawl into a hole and just like live there permanently. Never poke my head out and see the sun again. So That would be cool. I don't think the press is a major concern. I'm not saying that, but I just did notice that it seemed like UCF wasn't going to go down easy, and Iowa State still came away with a win and still held their lead. Don't get me wrong, but maybe in a night when you don't shoot 15 to 17 from the free throw line, things go a little bit differently. Is all I'm saying. And I do think this team shoots free throws very well. Like, we know this. And yes, the Arizona game didn't go perfectly, but they still do, on average, shoot very well. I don't think this is the end of the world. It's just something I noticed at the end of that game. UCF kind of put the pedal to the metal, and they almost, things almost fell their way. That's for sure. Now, we've talked a lot about the game as a whole. We've talked about the starters. We needed to dive into the bench because, honestly, I think that's the biggest deal from this game. We'll do that coming up right after this. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. I'm currently looking for furniture, and their huge selection makes it easy to find pieces that fit my style and budget. My favorite part, the free and hassle-free delivery, even for the larger items. Wayfair's site was so easy to navigate, and I found everything I needed in no time. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. So Iowa State defeats UCF in a 12-point showdown, 77-65 on the road. I do think this is a big win for the Cyclones for multiple reasons, but the biggest one for me was the production off of the bench. Haven't talked about it yet. That's what we're here to do now. Not sure why my hair is looking like that, but I think that's fine. It is what it is. It's the humidity, right? In the middle of winter here in Ames. Okay, we've talked about Jefferson, Momcilovic, Jackson, Lipsey, Gilbert. Good, very good performance from them. I don't think it's anything to scoff at. Now, what we're looking at is the bench. Okay, 3 guys come off the bench in this 8-man rotation for the Cyclones, most notably Curtis Jones, kind of deemed that 6th starter for the Cyclones. He brought 10 off the bench. Did shoot 2 of 9. Not a great shooting night for Curtis Jones, 4 of 13 from the floor as a whole. Didn't shoot any free throws. One who did shoot free throws, Brandon Chatfield, brings 9 of his own, and Nate Heise brings 8. Okay. Now, Nate Heise with 8, wild. Last time he had that many points, I believe it was UCF. So maybe there's just a correlation there. And I saw something about he had scored that many points in his last 5 games. He scored 7 or something. So coming through in the clutch for the UCF game. And then Brandon Chatfield, we haven't seen this from him in what feels like an eternity. Remember, we did a full segment on this show talking about how good Brandon Chatfield can be, and how he's kind of a key piece for this Cyclones team. Everything he does production-wise, outside of even just the box score, and I do think that remains true. That reigns true, I think, is the term. But it's showing up here in the box score in this game. And why is that a big deal? Well, one, obviously, the Momcilovic return is benefiting this entire team. And I do think that is I can say that with a lot of confidence at this point. Obviously, the TCU game could have been an outlier. Maybe TCU comes in, they're just unsure of how Milan's going to go about things. Iowa State gets a little bit of juice with Milan back out on the floor, and it's also at home. Things go great for the Cyclones, and then you go down to UCF, and hypothetically, you could, drop the ball. Okay. Now, that's not what happened. They purposefully dropped the ball so it would bounce back up into their hand. That's called a dribble. They maintained control quite a bit throughout the course of this game. I don't really know why I use that analogy. I apologize. The point is, okay, I think Momcilovic being back in this game, I'm looking at the minutes of these 8 dudes who are out on the floor, and they're all down yet again. We're seeing nobody over 36 minutes, and that was Keshon Gilbert. Outside of that, you've got a 32, 31, and 27 are your next 3 highest minutes. That's awesome. That's what this team, it makes sense the way that this team runs. That's how this team operates. That's how this team is at its best when they are the most dangerous. Okay. Brandon Chatfield and Nate Heise bringing offensive production to this team is amazing. Okay. Then you have 3 bigs who are really in the paint and doing something for you on the actual scoreboard in Jefferson, in Jackson, and Chatfield. Okay, Jefferson and Jackson combining for 21. 21. And then Brandon Chatfield bringing 9 of his own. That's 30 points off the bench, off the bigs in this game for the Cyclones. That's big. 30 points of the 77. I mean, are you kidding me? That's a pretty good percentage there, especially on a night when they shoot 25% from 3. That's how you're going to get it done, is with the bigs on the inside. And then Nate Heise with 8 of his own, and then Curtis Jones. I mean, we've it's not really a bench guy. He's kind of a second starter, sixth man, who's a starter, if you will. Now, we've also got to look at the rebound production here for the 3 guys that quote unquote come off the bench because it's such a quick rotation. I'm going to use those quotes. There's 14 rebounds that come off the bench. That to me, and only 2 turnovers, which is not related to rebounds, but I just saw that. That's pretty awesome. That to me just shows you what they do off the bench. They come in, they fly around, and they go back to the bench. You know, it's like this quick rotation. We've talked about it. We obviously see it out on the floor. But that right there, you come in, you get 14 rebounds in a collective. Oh, I don't even know what that would be. 48 plus 16. So like 52, 62 minutes. 14 rebounds in there. That's not really the ratio. That's not like the rate ratio because it's 4 and 16 for Brandon Chatfield. But my point is, they're coming in and they're making big money moves. They are making a big difference in the way that these games go. And it's a lot easier for these guys to do that now that Momcilovic is back in. They can come in and be explosive, be that burst of energy, and then get back to the sideline. The other side of this that we haven't even touched on is how Momcilovic has a role on this team. Okay. And probably this should be its own segment, but we're going to do it quickly here. Momcilovic is a dude. Okay. We know this. Just an absolute player. When he's out, somebody or a group of people need to rise to that occasion. They simply do. Or the team is either A, different team, or B, not on the same level it was. I don't personally think it's fair to put Nate Heise and Momcilovic in the same basket and just say, Nate, need you to do what Momcilovic was doing. All right, jump out there and do it. And I don't know if it was a headspace thing. I don't know if it was a different type of play that Nate wasn't really comfortable with. Confidence, I don't know where that's at. Excuse me. I don't know where that whole thing lands. But now we're seeing with Momcilovic back and Nate Heise being able to be in this role where you contribute 20 minutes off the bench, you score 8 points, which is, if you can keep that up, that would be great. You come in, 4 rebounds, give an assist, your fast break option, just intense defense, boom, 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 back to the bench, back in, boom, 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 boom. If there's an offensive opportunity, you take it. You set some screens, couple rebounds, back to the bench, running up and down the floor. If that's the role that Nate Heise has to fill, I think he plays in that role a lot better. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that he's an inferior player to Momcilovic or even a superior player to Momcilovic. Okay. Because when you look at it, Momcilovic only had 1 rebound. He only had 3 points. Nate Heise had more in both of those categories. Okay? Now, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not it's like comparing apples to oranges, which is a weird saying because they're both fruits. My point is they do different things. We've seen how the offense is affected when Momcilovic is not in. Like we have an actual big sample size of games to pull from. Nate Heise doesn't have to do that role anymore. The rest of the team doesn't have to try to mold to fit that offensive style anymore. Now with Momcilovic back in the game, we can see Brandon Chatfield and Nate Heise roll back into these roles that we've seen them in really before that 7 games. I think it was 7 games without Momcilovic, and that team was almost unstoppable. So that to me is a great sign for the future. If we can keep everybody healthy and we stay around kind of this offensive mentality, like we've talked about, this is a team that can beat you in so many ways. 25% from 3. Okay, well, we're going to bring 30 from our bigs. I don't know what to tell you. We're going to score what? How many did they actually have? 16 from the line. This team's going to get it done. They're going to get it. They're a good team. They're a very good team. In my opinion, a Final Four contender, but I don't really want to say that after a win over UCF. I want to see a big win over Cincinnati, who's got momentum. which we'll talk about later this week. And then obviously Houston, that you beat Houston, and depending on how that game goes, even if it's a loss, if it's like super close, depending on how that game goes, that's what I'll be deciding if I do think prior to the tournament this is a Final Four team. Now, obviously the wheels can fall off at any point on the road, but this win was very reassuring for me personally. Now, that being said, we're going to jump into the past a little bit here and talk about something that happened this past weekend. Call it College Ames Day, coming up right after this. Iowa State beats UCF. We've talked about that all show. Okay, now it's time to go back into the past a little bit and talk about College Ames Day. Okay, something that doesn't happen a whole lot. Obviously, remember when Iowa State played Iowa at home just a few years ago? I think it was actually maybe even last year. It's obviously every other year or so. But the College Game Day came to Ames. Actually, that would have been 3 years ago, whatever that was, with Purdy, I believe. And that was a big deal. Okay, the College Ames Day shirts were all over, everywhere. Everyone was hyped. Everyone was out there. Big deal. Very big deal. Now, College Game Day comes to Ames for Iowa State TCU last Saturday. Okay, we were talking about it. The diehard fans camped out in front of Hilton night prior. Everybody's in line right away, getting in there right away, getting the good seats, you cheer on the Cyclones against the Horned Frogs and see this College Game Day set. Now, I'm mentioning this with my friends, and everyone's like, why are people camping out? And I'm saying, it's probably got to do with the College Game Day coming to town. And they're like, what? Why would College Game Day come to town? This is basketball. Well, this is where this conversation is going to start. I don't think anybody knows about this College Game Day, this basketball College Game Day. And it's a shame because it could be so much better. That's what we're talking about. We're going to talk about how could it be so much better? How are we going to get to that level? Now, the question is, first off, what is College Game Day? Okay. Who is College Game Day basketball? Because it's not going to be Pat McAfee, right? There's no Kirk Herbstreit on the men's basketball College Game Day set. So it's Reese Davis, which is actually kind of crazy. And having just mentioned Kirk Herbstreit, but Reese Davis, Jay Belis, Seth Greenberg, Andrea Carter, and Jay Williams. Okay, those five get the desk out. Boom, they're there before the game, and they showcase kind of the environment, and they're right down there on the court. Now, why don't people know about this? I think for one, they just don't do it very much. 7 weeks at the end of the season. Not a lot of times, okay? Now, granted, I know that there's a lot of things about this time of year that are just difficult compared to the football season. But you just can't do it for only 7 weeks and expect to have great results. That's my first point here. You need to do it more, okay? Because there's more basketball games. There just is. Yeah, if you do it 7 weeks during the football season, still probably not enough. Probably need to do it every week of the entire year, realistically. I think College Game Day brings that atmosphere. It's awesome. But that being said, 7 weeks is a greater percentage of the games of football than it is of the basketball. Okay. So you're only doing 7 games, essentially. You're only showcasing 7 fan bases, coliseums, whatever, like the I don't know, it's not, I always think Hilton Coliseum, but like Fieldhouse, Allen Fieldhouse, just these, I can't think of the word, but courts, these home courts, only 7 times. And I think it's in here that they pretty much like, hey, Duke and UNC kind of in this, like always. So that's 2. Then you get 5 left. And yes, it came to Ames. That's awesome. Obviously, you hope it comes here more. I do think Hilton magic is a very real thing. I think that the fans that the Cyclones have are just beyond emphatic. They give their most to everything. Okay. And I think this is a great spot for it. But you have to do it more. Okay. Yes, they are going to, I think it's Auburn, Alabama. That's 1-2 this upcoming weekend. You can go back throughout the course of the season, and every weekend, pretty much once conference play starts, find a great place to go. Okay. It doesn't have to be 1-2, right? Remember when it went to JMU for football And James Madison just went absolutely bananas. Granted, they were having a Cinderella type of year, but the place was nuts. Okay, you can show off places like that. I think that's what this college game day needs to look into, right? That's how you build the noise around. I mean, genuinely, the people I was talking to they thought I was lying. They did not think there was a men's basketball college game day. I don't know. I'm not trying to maybe fix ESPN here. I just think that if college game day comes to Ames, I want to see the hype around it. When it came to Ames for the football game, it was like genuine. Are we going out there tonight or maybe 4 a.m. tomorrow morning to be able to see this? Like everybody's talking about it. And I think literally the only people that knew were the ones that were camping out before the TCU game, which is a shame because it's a big deal. It's a big deal. It shows how good your program is. It shows what Iowa State's been doing this year. Granted, came at the end of a 3-game losing streak. It was against TCU in a game that we basically had control of from the tip-off, and that's unfortunate. But if it's an opportunity to showcase some of the greatest teams in the country or the greatest environments, and Iowa State's on that list, and it doesn't get the publication that I think it deserves, that to me is like, okay, we got to do something here. So we can, when it comes back to Ames, because it will, Iowa State will be great for years, and Hilton Magic's not going anywhere. Then I want the publication, right? We want people to know who Iowa State is. We're starting to turn things around with the 11-win season, the Pop-Tart Bowl win. All right, the Big 12 championships in the last few years, obviously, obviously Oklahoma and then Arizona State starting to get the name on the map, and the men's basketball team rising to 2 in the national ranks this year. Like, we're getting closer, but this college basketball game day thing could help with that. Now, the other side of this that we haven't touched on is the weather. I understand it's freezing in basically north of Missouri. I know right now it's like negative 50 degrees. Okay. I don't even want to go outside. Thankfully, we get to record this inside. That's going to play a role. That is certainly going to play a role, but that's also why the set's inside. Okay. So, at the end of the day, I'm not here trying to make ESPN better by any means. I'm just a lowly Cyclone fan. I understand that, but I do want the pub essentially for this team and how good this university is and just how great our fans are. And I think that this college game day thing could be a great thing, not only for the Cyclones, but for all of college basketball as a whole. The other thing, like I mentioned it sort of, but didn't really talk about, is the more they do this, they're going to be fighting with other major events. Okay. The Super Bowl, the college football playoffs, the obviously the NFL playoffs. Okay. There's a lot of big things that go down during the college basketball season. We've been here for quite a while now, but realistically, there's big events in there, and ESPN will have to fight with those. And then, do the resources actually outweigh? I can see it. I know it. I know what you mean, but it's almost like an investment you've got to make, because I can tell you the students are going to be there, especially if it's an 11 a.m. game on a Saturday. And the college football playoffs aren't until the evening, and they were all weird this year during all the weekdays and everything anyways. I assume you're not doing college game day during the week. Do it on a Saturday. Go to either a really rowdy fan base or one of the biggest games that weekend, and you just get to talk. And I mean, TJ Otzelberger got to go up on the mic, and everything he said we've heard 1,000 times, but you get those perspectives from all sorts of coaches across the nation, and that's how you build up that brand. Okay, and doesn't help that it's the exact same name. I know it's because it's ESPN, College Game Day, but it gets so easily confused with the historic football College Game Day. I can see where there's like confusion there, and also maybe that helps it. I don't know. I'm not a marketing manager here. Just saying, I wish Iowa State was able to benefit from that, because I feel like a lot of people were confused. Like, what is there's a College Game Day truck outside. What's that? Is that Reese Davis on there? Reese Davis? Yeah, he actually is. He literally is. Unbelievable show, too. I mean, it's great production. My point is, it could be so much better. Like, why not? Let's figure that out. Then it'll come back to Ames, and boom, Iowa State's no longer a joke. That's really all I'm asking for here. Is that too much to ask? I don't think so. I don't think it's too much to ask for you to hit the subscribe button either. I'm going to be honest. If you're still here at this point, haven't subscribed, what are you doing? Thanks for sticking around. I appreciate it more than you know. Can't wait to talk more ball tomorrow with you guys. Obviously, some coaching changes on the football side of things we may have to dive in on if the story progresses. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.